These are devotions for people at a social distance. In my, time spent on social media, I've come across messages from Christians. I'm sure you have too, where people express their doubts about resorting to science, to resorting to a vaccine, to deal with this present crisis, and suggest that this is foolishness and that we should trust in the Lord. And I find that kind of message kind of discouraging. I wanted to respond and say, you know what? Yes, I believe God is gracious. God might well cure you from COVID-19 if you don't resort to using the vaccine. But guess what? That will be in spite of your foolishness, and God would prefer you to use the God-given reason God's given to you to avail yourself of this wonderful gift of a vaccine that God has made available to us through the efforts of some really extraordinary science and research and scientists. That would be my response. But anyways, I was thinking about all of this as I read this morning. This is the story of, in the 6th chapter of 1 Samuel, of the plague in Philistia. So the Philistines have won the Ark of the Covenant in a battle against the Israelites, and they've taken possession of this symbol of the presence of God with the people of Israel, and they have it in their Philistine cities. And as a result, we are told a plague begins to spread throughout the Philistine cities, and this plague is distinguished by, it's hard to translate, hard to be sure, distinguished, according to the translation I was read, by tumors growing on people's body, and there seems to be a role of mice, infestations of mice that are connected to this disease. And so this is what the lords and the prophets of the Philistines say that the Philistines must do. So you must make images of your tumors and images of your mice that ravage the land, and give glory to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will lighten his hand on you and your gods and on your land. Why should you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts after he had made fools of them? Did they not let the people go, and they departed? So what we have in the story in First Samuel is the Philistines actually being held up as a better example than the Egyptians for how to deal with plagues. So what did the Philistines do? Well, they took this thing that they were frightened of that was plaguing them, and they created an image of it. And that's kind of a hard thing for us to understand on a practical level. What's that supposed to do? But on a metaphorical level, it's actually a lot like what we are doing in the face of this pandemic. We have created, the scientists and researchers and companies have created what are called mRNA vaccines, which create a protein that, when injected to you, induce the cells of your body to create a protein which is an image of the virus that causes COVID-19. And so this idea of image making, creating an image of the thing that is threatening you, does kind of relate to what is being done with this particular vaccine. And I know that's not a direct correlation, but for me, it's sort of a metaphorical reminder of that there are measures that we take, and God gives us measures that we can take in the face of certain threats. And this is a faithful response. Just because you are creating images of this virus that is threatening you does not mean that you are not trusting God. And the Philistines are held up as an example of what you need to do. So, when you start to hear that message that relying on science and relying on vaccines is a denial of God, I do not think that is a way of thinking and approach that is at all suggested or merited by the Bible. And that's just something I wanted to remind us all today. Lord, God, I know there's little we can do sometimes to persuade people, but I pray that you would be at work in people's hearts to persuade them to act responsibly and wisely in the face of this pandemic. Amen.